Mr. Ned Thomas, I have a quick question for you. And one of the things is, North Las Vegas is a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of issues in the area, including, poverty, homelessness, unemployment rate is very high in certain parts of North Las Vegas. And I'm just wondering, especially with the homelessness and well, basically, all those issues really, what are you going to do? There's a lot of veterans that are homeless. I just went by there the other day and there's tents all down the street. And it's really, really breaks my heart, first of all, because, these men and women go and serve and they don't have a place to live. And it doesn't help in the community. I'm just wondering, what you plan to do if you're going to be mayor, if you get elected, what you're planning to do to solve some of these issues, including crime, homelessness, poverty, unemployment. What kinds of measures are you going to do to change these things in the environment? And also, your diversity, what kind of experience do you have working with all kinds of people? Because, that area has a variety of different cultures, and how are you going to tackle these issues?
Yeah,
It's kind of
there was a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
No, but all of the things that you touch upon are very important. Let's see, I had some thoughts, and now I have too many thoughts.
I guess we'll start with the homelessness.
Yeah, let's
if
do
you
that.
Can start with the homelessness and the homeless veterans and the homeless families that are there, in tents, with the weather that we have out here, the extreme heat and the extreme cold. What is one of the things you're going to do to help those that are on the streets? I mean, we pay our tax dollars for the homeless shelters and things, but I see a lot of people are still out there with no food, no place to live, and it's, very important.
Okay. One of the other things that I made as my priority is I think that the mayor of North Las Vegas, we need to elect someone with the stature of a leader in North Las Vegas, not just for the city, but increasingly we are doing things on the regional level, and there's a lot of collaboration between the city of North Las Vegas, Henderson County, and we have a regional planning coalition that was formed a number of years ago, and it does very good work on a very limited budget. It's a model, I believe, for the rest of the country. They have set up a coalition on homelessness. They have a woman at the county, Shannon West, who leads their plans, and she does an excellent job. And we need to continue to fund her position, her programs, and continue to provide leadership in this area. Now, one of the things that I proposed is that the mayor of North Las Vegas needs to get together with the mayor of Las Vegas, because that corridor along Las Vegas Boulevard, most of the tents, I think that's where you're referring to. I took my children down to the Las Vegas Natural History Museum a couple of weeks ago, and we were driving along, and my children were asking me about the people in the tents along the street, and I realized that I personally need to go down. When we lived in California, I regularly worked at the homeless shelter, and I think some of my children were old enough I could take them down. They need to see what is going on in the community and have a little bit broader of an understanding. But I would want to work with the mayor of Las Vegas to address that issue. Again, I think that there are many things that we can do. Now, in the city of North Las Vegas in particular, we have had, and this is an enormous issue in this campaign for mayor, we have had trouble in our housing authority. And two of the candidates that I'm running against sat on that housing board as the housing board was run into the ground. And it had to be disbanded. The HUD said that they would no longer send the money to the North Las Vegas Housing Board because it was so poorly managed. These people who were sitting on the board, if they didn't know what was going on in that housing authority, should have known. And if they did know, they should have done something about it. But then they turned around and now they're saying, well, we want to run the entire city when they couldn't even run the housing authority. What I have proposed is, and I fully support, there's a movement underway to form a regional housing authority similar to the Regional Transportation Commission that's been very successful. Now, down in Henderson, the city of Henderson does not have its own housing authority. Their public housing needs are served by Clark County. And based on that model, it would be expanded and there would be a regional housing authority that would allow us to compete for federal funds against other areas of the country. And I push that because one of the issues that regional housing authority could address is our regional homelessness problem. And I think that is the most effective way to do that. Again, the SNRPC, the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition, has been very effective and very successful in the things that it has chosen to take on, and the homelessness issue is one of those. Now, with regard to diversity that you mentioned at the very end, I think I have no problem saying that I'm positive that I am the most qualified in that regard. I had a very interesting experience over the weekend. Well, let me back up a bit. As I mentioned in my biography, I've spent a lot of time in Japan and in Asia. We've also spent a great deal of time on the East Coast in New York and in Boston. When I was a graduate student, we lived in one of the poorer areas of Boston, in Watertown, and we, through our church affiliations, we had a lot of people who were on public assistance, and it was very eye-opening to see the things that they are challenged with. I'm happy to say that they continue to call us on the phone even today. We made some wonderful friendships. But I had an experience over this past weekend that reminded me of being in Japan again. When I was in Japan, I was often the outsider looking at, I lived in a very small village, and I was the only Caucasian there, the only English speaker, I will say. Well, over the weekend, I went down to one of the influential African-American churches in West Las Vegas to speak, because they have a number of members who live in North Las Vegas. And so far, it's been one of the best experiences on my campaign. And as I sat there and experienced something that was very different from my own cultural background, that I felt very much like I was in Japan again. And I enjoyed that very, very much, because I found that I enjoy being the outsider looking in. But more so, I have a very strong curiosity, and so it's fun for me to learn new things. And as I mentioned, I've worked in homeless shelters. Yeah, just because of my much broader background. I'm not just, some people will say, well, we're natives of North Las Vegas, and that is a really great thing if they've been here a long time, but I've been able to get a broad amount of, I call it practical education, but through the jobs that I have had and moved around the country. And I think that for a mayor, that's a very good experience to have, because you can pick out, in the Japanese way, you can pick out the things that are best in other cultures and make them your own, adapt them to your own.
Well, thank you, Mr. Thomas, for being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.